Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. It was a cold autumn evening when I found myself standing at his front gate, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't quite piece together. We had known each other for a few months, meeting through mutual friends, but in that time we had shared far more than I had ever expected. It wasn't supposed to be anything more than a few late-night conversations and helping him out when he needed it. I was just trying to be a good friend. He was handsome, older than me by a few years, with sharp features and a quiet intensity that made him seem almost unreachable. But every time we talked, I felt drawn to him, like there was something magnetic about the way he listened, the way his eyes would linger just a little longer than necessary. But I ignored the feeling, telling myself that it was nothing, that he was just a nice guy, and I was simply looking for a little distraction from the chaos in my own life. Thought it was supposed to be a casual evening, helping him with some work around the house, nothing out of the ordinary. We'd spent the evening cleaning up after a small gathering at his place. Just a few people, but the conversation had shifted in a way I wasn't prepared for. He had started talking to me about his marriage, about his wife. I didn't know much about her, only that they had been married for several years and had 2 children. He had always mentioned her in passing, but tonight, there was something different in his tone and edge of frustration. Something more raw. We had spent hours cleaning, the silence between us growing more palpable with each passing minute. As the night deepened, the conversation started to wind down. The others had left hours ago, and I was about to say my goodbyes when he turned to me with a tired smile. "You don't have to go just yet," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "It's late and I don't want you driving home alone in the dark. You can stay for a bit longer, just until the chill settles down." I hesitated, feeling an odd pull. I had told myself for weeks that I would keep my distance, that nothing could happen. But I had always been terrible at resisting temptation, and tonight was no different. "Are you sure?" I asked, knowing full well what the answer would be. He smiled again, that same tired smile, but there was something else there now, something I couldn't quite place. "Yeah, it's fine," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I stayed. The hours passed quickly after that, and before I knew it, we were sitting on the couch, sipping wine, the air between us thick with something unspoken. The conversation had taken a more personal turn, his eyes constantly shifting from my face to his glass as he spoke of the distance growing between him and his wife. His words weren't angry, just resigned, like he had been carrying a weight for far too long. "I don't know what happened," he said, looking into his glass, his fingers tapping nervously on the stem. "We've drifted apart and it feels like I'm invisible to her. We've lost something and I don't know how to get it back." I felt the pang of sympathy in my chest. I could hear the quiet desperation in his voice, the pain of a man who had been neglected for far too long. My heart ached for him, and I found myself inching closer, wanting to comfort him in any way I could. "I'm sorry," I murmured, not knowing what else to say. "I can't imagine what that must be like." He glanced up at me, his eyes locking with mine for the first time that night. There was a flicker of something there, something I hadn't noticed before. It was as if the walls had come down, and what was left between us was raw and unguarded. His gaze lingered on me a little longer than I was comfortable with, and my pulse quickened. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but I told myself it was just the wine. Just the moment I stood up to leave, telling myself it was time to go, but he was standing before I could reach the door, his hand closing around the knob as he looked at me with a mixture of longing and desperation. "Please," he said, his voice rough. I don't want to be alone tonight." I could feel the tension in the room tightening, the air charged with something dangerous. I had already crossed a line by staying this long, but something inside me whispered that if I walked away now, I'd regret it forever. And so, against all better judgment, I stayed. He led me back to the living room, and as he closed the door behind us, something shifted in the air. It was no longer just about comfort. There was an unspoken understanding between us, A recognition that something was happening, something that neither of us could quite explain. I shouldn't be doing this, I whispered, my voice barely audible, but it was too late to turn back now. He was standing too close, his breath warm on my neck, his hands shaking as they reached for me. I don't care, he murmured, his voice thick with need. Nobody's coming tonight. It's just you and me. I didn't know how to react. I didn't know how to make sense of the emotions swirling inside me. But I didn't move away. I didn't pull back. He kissed me then, slow and deliberate, as if he was savoring every moment. The kiss was different from anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't just passion or desire. It was something deeper, something that felt like an awakening. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't desperate. He was simply present. As his hands roamed, I felt the weight of his touch, the tenderness, the quiet intensity. I had never felt wanted in such a way. It was as if he could see into me past the surface, to the place I had hidden away for so long. And in that moment, all of the doubts, the guilt, the fear, it all faded into the background. When the kiss broke, we stood there, breathing heavily, our foreheads resting against each other. What are we doing? I whispered, my voice shaky. We're living, he said, his voice full of quiet determination. For tonight, we're living. And that was it. That was all it took. One moment, one touch, one admission that we were. Both yearning for something more than what we had sought in the silence that followed, he locked the gate. Not just to his house, but to the outside world. For that brief, fleeting moment, it was just us. Just two people lost in the chaos of their own lives, finding solace in one another's arms. But when the night ended, so did the fantasy. We both knew what we had done, but neither of us spoke of it again. The guilt settled in later, but so did the realization that, for a brief, beautiful moment, I had been seen. Really seen. And as I left his house the next morning, I knew that this would be a secret neither of us could forget. The days following that night felt like walking through a fog. Everything seemed muted, distant. I couldn't stop replaying the events in my mind, unable to shake the weight of what had happened. The guilt pressed on me like a heavy blanket, but there was also something else, something I hadn't expected. A sense of liberation, of freedom. I tried to ignore it. I tried to go back to my daily routine, my job, my husband, the kids, the usual motions of life, but something had shifted inside me. Every touch from Mark felt distant, every kiss felt hollow. I found myself drifting, mentally and emotionally, as though I was no longer fully present in my own life. The more I tried to push the memory of that night with him away, the more it lingered in my mind. Victor's touch, his kiss, the way he had made me feel alive, seen, desired. I hadn't realized how starved I had been for that connection, for someone to really look at me and not just see the roles I'd been playing for years. Mark noticed the change, of course. He noticed how I had become distant, how my responses seemed automatic, how I couldn't quite look him in the eye anymore. But instead of addressing it, he retreated further into his own world, his own routines. We were two strangers coexisting, under the same roof, passing each other like ships in the night. One afternoon, a week after that night, my phone buzzed. I picked it up without thinking, my heart pounding when I saw his name. Victor. It had been days since I had heard from him. I had convinced myself I was just a fleeting moment in his life, a passing distraction, but as I read his message, I felt my breath catch. I've been thinking about you. I know what we did. And I know it wasn't just a mistake. You were right about everything. I can't stop thinking about you either. Meet me tomorrow at my place when you're free. No pressure, just me to see you again. I stared at the message, my fingers trembling as I held the phone. I didn't know what to think, what to do. I had already crossed a line, already stepped into a world I couldn't unsee. But the idea of seeing him again, of feeling that connection, that warmth, it was like a magnet I couldn't resist. The next day, I found myself at his door, standing in front of it as if I had no control over my own body. He opened the door before I could even knock, as if he had been waiting for me. His eyes were soft, almost vulnerable, and there was a strange calmness to him that I hadn't noticed before. "You came," he said quietly, a slight smile pulling at his lips. "I couldn't not come," I admitted, my voice barely above. "Whisper." He stepped aside, allowing me to enter. The house was just as I remembered, quiet, warm, full of his presence. It felt like a safe haven, a place where the outside world couldn't touch us. We didn't speak at first. We just stood there. In the living room, the silence between us stretching longer than it should have. But I didn't feel awkward, not with him. It was like the world outside had disappeared, leaving just the two of us in this fragile space we had created together. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and soft. "I've thought about that night a lot, about you, about us." I looked at him, trying to gather my thoughts. "Victor, I don't know what this is. I don't know what we're doing." He smiled gently, walking closer, his presence steady and reassuring. "We're not doing anything, not yet. We're just ... here, and sometimes that's enough." His words hit me harder than I expected. Sometimes that's enough. It felt like a truth I had been avoiding for years, a truth I hadn't wanted to face. The idea that maybe I didn't need to have all the answers, that maybe I could just exist. In the moment and let things unfold was both terrifying and liberating. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm married, I have a family. This can't be real." "I'm not asking for anything," he replied, his hand gently brushing my arm. "But I won't pretend that what we shared didn't mean something. It's okay to acknowledge that." His touch sent a wave of warmth through me. I wanted to step back, to run, to do the right thing. But the other part of me, the part that had been hidden for so long, longed for this, longed for him. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. "I'm lost," I said softly, my voice breaking as the tears started to fall. "I don't know who I am anymore." He took a step forward, pulling me gently into his arms, holding me as if I were the only thing that mattered. His touch was comforting, familiar, and I let myself surrender to it. I let myself be vulnerable in his arms, letting the tears flow. Freely. "You're not lost," he whispered, his voice soothing. "You just need to find yourself again. And sometimes you have to lose your way to remember who you are." We stood there for what felt like hours, the weight of my emotions heavy in the air, but his presence grounding me, reminding me that I wasn't alone. We didn't speak much after that. We didn't need to. The silence was comfortable, full. Of understanding Dodd as I left his house later that afternoon, I felt different. I wasn't sure if it was the weight of the secret I was carrying or the realization that I had allowed myself to be seen, to feel, to exist outside of the roles I had created for myself, but something inside me had shifted. And I didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but it was real. More real than anything I had felt in years. I returned to Mark, to my family, to the life I had built. But now, there was a quiet ache in me, a reminder of the woman I had been before everything became routine. And while I didn't know what the future held, I knew one thing for sure. I could never forget what it felt like to be truly seen. The days after my visit to Victor's house were filled with a strange combination of peace and restlessness. The weight of the secret was heavy in my chest, but there was a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in years. Mark, oblivious to what had happened, went on as usual, unaware that I was drifting farther from him with each passing day. I went through the motions of my life, but the truth was, I was no longer the same woman I had been before that night. Victor's presence lingered in my thoughts. I found myself replaying the conversations we had shared, the warmth of his touch, the way he had seen through me like no one else had in years. But I knew it couldn't last. I was married. I had children. I had responsibilities. And while I couldn't deny the pull I felt toward him, I couldn't just abandon my family for a fleeting moment of connection. But then, one evening, something changed. Mark had been more present lately, more attentive. We had started talking more. actually discussing our issues rather than just letting them fester. He wasn't perfect, no one was, but there were moments where I saw the man I had fallen in love with, the one who had once looked at me like I was the center of his world. It was fleeting, but it was there. That evening, we sat down to dinner together, just the two of us. A rare occurrence. We didn't have kids to distract us, no pressing work, no television or phones. We just ate, and for the first time in what felt like forever, we talked. Really talked. I've been thinking, Mark said, breaking the silence. About everything, about us. I know I've been distant. I know I've been caught up in my own world, but I don't want to lose you. I froze, the weight of his words sinking into me. This was what I had wanted. This was what I had hoped for. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was still missing. Something I hadn't been able to find with him, no matter how much I tried. I don't know what's going on with me, I whispered, the truth escaping before I could stop it. I don't know if I can give you what you need anymore. Mark reached across the table, his hand covering mine, and I could see the pain in his eyes. I just want to try, even if it's hard. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I felt a tightness in my chest as I looked at him, torn between the love I still had for him and the undeniable connection I had felt with Victor. I didn't know what I wanted anymore, and it felt like I was drowning in indecision. But then, just as I thought I gathered the strength to make a decision, the phone rang. I excused myself, feeling a sudden unease settle in my stomach. I glanced at the caller ID. It was an unknown number. When I answered, the voice on the other end sent a chill down my spine. "Is this your name?" the voice asked, calm, but with an underlying tension. "Yes," I replied, my voice trembling. "It's about Victor," the voice said. "You need to know something." My heart stopped. The world seemed to tilt beneath me as I steadied myself on the kitchen counter. What about Victor? There was a pause on the other end, a long, agonizing silence. Then the voice spoke again, softer this time. "He's gone. He passed away last night." The words hit me like a slap across the face, sending shockwaves through my entire body. I couldn't process it. My mind refused to accept what I had. "Just heard." What do you mean?" I stammered. "How? He was fine." He was found at his house this morning," the voice continued. "We believe it was a heart attack. He didn't suffer. But you should know, he'd been talking about you a lot. His last words were about you, about how he wished he could have seen you again." I felt my knees buckle beneath me, the room spinning as I sank into a chair, my hand clutching the phone like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. This couldn't be real. It couldn't. Not after everything we had shared, not after everything he had made me feel. "I need to go," I muttered, hanging up the phone without waiting for a response. My mind was reeling. I stood up, heart pounding, thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. Mark was still sitting at the table when I returned, his face full of concern. What's wrong? I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My throat tightened, and I felt the tears begin to well in my eyes. I had just learned that Victor, the man who'd awakened something deep inside me, was gone, and I couldn't even begin to comprehend what this meant, what it was doing to me. "Victor's dead," I whispered, my voice broken. "He died last night." Mark's face paled, his hand dropping from mine as the weight of my words sank in. I could see the shock and confusion in his eyes, but something else too, something darker, something that made my stomach churn. "Victor?" he repeated, his voice tense. "You were talking to him recently?" I nodded, my tears falling freely now. "Yes, we connected, Mark. I felt alive with him, like I was seen in a way I haven't been in years." Mark didn't say anything for a long moment. Then his voice, low and almost detached, broke the silence. "What exactly happened between you two?" "Your name?" Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Mark stood up quickly, his face a mask of confusion and suspicion. "I'll get it," he muttered, walking toward the door. I wiped my tears away, trying to compose myself. The knock came again, more insistent this time. As Mark opened the door, my heart sank as I saw the last person I ever expected to walk through that door. A man in a dark suit stood there, a somber expression on his face. His eyes locked with mine as he stepped inside. He was holding a brown envelope in his hand. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said, his voice calm, but there was an edge to it. "I'm from the estate of Victor Morgan. There's something you need to see." Before I could even react, he handed me the envelope. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside, there was a letter written by Victor himself. I knew you would never understand what we shared. But what I want you to know is this: I wasn't the only one who was waiting. You were too. And the secret you're keeping will change everything, but you have to choose. You have to choose before it's too late. The room spun again, and I felt the weight of the world come crashing down on me. What secret? What was he talking about? Victor's letter didn't just speak of the past. It seemed to point to something in the future. Something I had yet to discover. And now I was left standing at the crossroads of a life I had built and a life I had lost. And the truth was, I wasn't sure which road I was meant to walk anymore. The words on the letter blurred before my eyes, my pulse racing as I held the paper in my trembling hands. The secret you're keeping will change everything. The sentence echoed in my mind, the meaning of it slipping just out of reach. My heart hammered in my chest, a storm of confusion and longing swirling inside me. Mark, still standing by the door, watched me closely. The man in the dark suit seemed to vanish into the background as the weight of Victor's words consumed me. My hands were cold as I folded the letter, my fingers shaking. Mark stepped forward, his face unreadable, his brow furrowed. "What is it?" he asked softly, his voice unsure, yet filled with an undercurrent of concern. I looked at him, my eyes filled with pain and confusion, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. How could I explain to him the depth of the yearning I felt, the desire for something more? Something that had been awakened by another man, by Victor? But before I could answer, Mark stepped toward me, his presence enveloping me. He reached for my hand, his grip warm but firm, a quiet promise of connection. I could feel the tension between us, the distance we had fought so hard to bridge, the love that had been buried beneath years of routine and neglect. And yet, in that moment, I realized it wasn't too late. I closed my eyes, my heart aching with the weight of the truth. "Mark," I whispered, my voice faltering, "I don't know what I want anymore. I don't know if I can go back to the way things were." Mark's face softened, his thumb gently brushing my knuckles. "You don't have to," he whispered. "We don't have to go back. But I want you, your name. I want all of you, your heart, your passion, your soul. Let me show you that we're not too far gone. I'm here with you. I want to love you like we've never loved before." The air between us seemed to thicken, the weight of his words settling over me like a blanket. I hadn't realized how much I had needed to hear them. I hadn't realized how much I had missed him, how much I had missed us. I pulled him toward me, closing the gap between us. And for the first time in years, our lips met with an intensity that took my breath away. It was not just a kiss, it was a reunion of hearts, a rediscovery of the love that had always been there, buried under the layers of time. Mark's hands were gentle but urgent, as though he were trying to reassure me that everything would be okay, that we could rebuild what we had lost. His fingers tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, deepening the kiss. I responded eagerly, feeling the heat between us rekindle, burning away the doubts and fears that had clouded my mind. In that moment, I knew that I'd never really been lost. I had only needed to be reminded by Victor, by Mark, by the part of me that had always been waiting to feel alive again. Mark's lips trailed down my neck, his breath hot against my skin. The way he touched me with reverence and urgency was a reminder of the tenderness that had once defined us. But this time it was different. This time I didn't hold back. I pressed myself against him, feeling the strength of his embrace, the way his body molded perfectly against mine. I could feel the heat building between us, the connection intensifying with every touch, every kiss. His hands were everywhere, caressing, exploring, reaffirming that we were still here. Still as Dot in the quiet of the house, time seemed to stand still as we rediscovered each other. The world outside faded into the background, leaving only the sound of our breathing, the soft whispers of love exchanged between us, the way we moved together like two souls reunited. And as the night unfolded, as the passion between us deepened, I realized that what had felt lost wasn't lost at all. It was just waiting for the right moment, the right connection, the right love to bring it back to life. We lay there together afterward, our bodies entangled, breathing in unison, the soft glow of the moonlight spilling through the window. I rested my head against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, the rhythm of his love grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in years. "I love you," Mark whispered into my hair, his voice hushed but full of conviction. "I love you, your name? I've always loved you." Tears welled in my eyes as I looked up at him, my heart full. "I love you too," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "And I'm here. I'm all yours." And in that moment, I knew that no matter what had happened before, we had found our way back to each other. Passion had reignited the fire we had once shared, but it was love, true, deep, uncheckable love that would keep us together, Dot, as the night stretched on. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, knowing that I was where I belonged. In Mark's arms, in the love we had almost lost, but had now found again. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift of all.